Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Two Marketing Guys podcast. My name is Mac, and I'm sitting here today with a cut above property management owner, Misty Burger. Burger. Just kidding. I'll cut that out. I was like, how do I say it?
Burger. No.
Burger. It's fancy. Maybe I'll leave that in.
No.
Okay, so anyway, sitting here today with Misty, and man, we got a slew of questions. This is going to be good. Okay. So the whole purpose of this podcast is to talk with anybody who might be listening to our Two Marketing Guys podcast, and they could be listening for a variety of reasons. Interested in business ownership, just want to hear about local businesses here in Colorado Springs. They find the topic of business fascinating. It could be anything, right? But our whole focus is to bring in business owners from around Colorado Springs to tell us about themselves, how they got started in business, what running a business is like, and then tell us about the business itself and go into those type of details. So when we were talking about this, it's like there are so many topics because this is such a big industry where people want to know what's going on. I feel like a lot of people are fascinated by this topic. Just real estate in general always raises a lot of ears, right? But then the whole property management side and having an investment property and talking to somebody who actually manages that on a day-to-day basis, I find that is a really interesting topic for me, but I know a lot of other people who are interested in that. So,
okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So let's get into it.
Okay. So
first off, I want to know how you even got started in this industry, and then what was your journey from starting in a professional life at around 18, 20, whatever it was, to actually getting to the point where you're like, I'm going to open up my own property management company. Like, what happened in that gap that led you to that?
So I met someone when I was waitress at Denny's, actually Village Inn, but and they introduced me to real estate and offered me a position with their company. It was a brand new company and offered me a position if I'd go to real estate school.
When was this?
Back in 1982.
Okay.
So I did go to real estate school, and it was like learning Russian, going from pancakes to deeds.
This is a lot of a transition there, right?
And so I was able to maintain my license. I became their real estate agent, and during that term, they purchased a property management company here in Colorado Springs. And so through the years, my diversion went from sales, which I've done for years, to the property management world. And so I've been everything from a house cleaner to a resident manager, property manager, office manager, broker, owner, and now owner. And so that's been a journey that's taken me 34 years.
Okay, so before we get into your company, what's it been like, or what kind of changes have you seen in the industry since the 80s to where we're at now? Like, how much has it changed?
So in the 80s, Colorado Springs was known as the HUD capital of America. We made the face and the front page of Time magazine.
Really?
For that distinction, which of course is not what we call great. However, through the years, every state has seen a big change in real estate. The economy plays huge with real estate. If the economy is strong, then sales are strong. If the economy is not as strong, then property management becomes strong. And so through the years, I've seen it come and go, and it always comes back. So real estate will always be something that I could recommend to my clients as a great investment. But it's just like anything else. You can't get into it one day and want to make a profit tomorrow.
Sure.
So you have to have some time. It's a long game. Yeah. And so even if the market dips for a couple of years, look at where we're at today. I mean, you can't keep anything on the market right now.
Yeah, it's a pretty hot market.
It is a hot market.
But so when it's a hot market, it's harder for property managers?
It's very hard for property managers because most of our owners are not... They didn't want to be a landlord. They became a landlord because they couldn't sell their property in a tough market.
Gotcha.
And so when that market changes, our clients take advantage, which they should, of that market. And so we lose a lot of our portfolio during that time.
Okay. Gotcha. Well, and you said there's ebb and flows to it. So
correct.
Yeah. Okay. So with that, What about changes in regulations? How has it changed from the 80s to where we're at now?
So the biggest change in property management industry, I would say, is medical marijuana.
Seems to be a touchy subject nowadays.
Well, it's a fact that we have to deal with because even though it's allowed in Colorado, it's still federally illegal.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's constantly education that has to be made, not only for our owners when we take on a property, however, the tenants that or people who move to our state and assume that they could just live wherever they like and be able to smoke whatever they like. And so that by far has been the largest change that Colorado has seen in probably 20 years.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I have to make an assumption here, but you probably get a lot of people wanting to be renters that have moved here strictly for that reason.
That's correct. And they, I've literally had people leave a lease signing when on the back page it says that no marijuana of any kind is allowed in our properties.
So even if the state or city, whatever, state, city, federal, like if it ever becomes a federal thing where they allow it, the owner can decide what goes in that house and not, right?
That is correct. The owner has the final say on that.
Yeah. So
smoking is not a protected class.
Gotcha.
So the owner has very few things that they can control. That is one of them. If they don't want to allow any smoking in their home, that's one area that they can control.
Okay, so there's a segue to another question, and I got a bunch, but what are some of the things that a homeowner can't control?
So one of the other items that's come up recently in the last probably 10 years is therapy animals. Or companion animals. So regular animals, your pet, an owner can control whether or not they want to accept an animal, what type of animal, the weight of an animal, whether it's cat, dog, pot-bellied pig, whatever it may be.
That surprised me.
And I've had them.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
However, now that the therapy and companion animal...
are those two separate things, by the way?
People use them interchangeably. Okay. There is a service animal, which means that that animal has actually gone through training and has certification for that. Sure. And a lot of people tie that to like a seeing eye dog. Okay. Yeah. That's an animal that person could not function without that animal. Okay. You cannot charge a deposit for an animal like that. They're not an animal. They're another person. They're assisting that person. But what's come into the area in the last couple of years is the companion/therapy animal, where if in the state of Colorado, if you go to a medical doctor and get a letter saying that you need assistance to get through the day, and they sign off on this letter, then the owner cannot charge a security deposit and cannot decline to take the animal. Wow. And so, unfortunately, in our day and age, there's very little that the owner has a say on. They can say how much the rent is going to be. They can say how much the term is going to be. They can say if there's no smoking, but very little after that. Wow. Okay. That's actually really interesting. Well, it's, I understand the need on both sides. Yeah, no, it's one of those things that's like you hate that there are rules on either side, but you understand why. Well, in property managers, their main goal is to limit the risk and liability to the owner's properties. Sure. And so it's difficult for us sometimes to not be able to help our owner not permit something on the property that we think would potentially have some damage. On the other side of the coin, it doesn't mean that as an owner, if that animal does damage, you can't charge them for the damage. Sure. It's very difficult, however, to collect that money. So the owner, in the end of the day, gets to have all that expense and very little option to collect the difference. Gotcha. So that's really interesting. Yeah, I can see that there's a lot of rules there, but I mean, and you kind of have to play that where you want the renters to like the property management group, but you also do stuff in the best interest of your owner, because if not, then you wouldn't be the property management company. So in Colorado, you have an agency that you have to discuss with your owners. You can either be
It's Friday.
I should know this, you know.
We're hitting a lot of topics there, so if you go blank on one, I'll understand. And it's Friday.
Well, you know, you're either going to be representing your owner or you're going to be representing the house, not the tenant or the owner. And
Sure.
so I choose to represent my owners in everything that I do. And so when a tenant comes in to sign a lease, they also have to sign the agency agreement that explains to them that I represent the owner in everything that I do.
Gotcha.
I am not representing the tenant. The fun part is, however, that I see the tenant all the time.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult relationship for tenants to understand.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, if a tenant calls and says, hey, you know, we have an opportunity to pick up 2 dogs, would the owner allow it? For example, I have to call that owner. I have to discuss the options, the pros and cons of those animals, and then I have to call them and give them the answer.
Okay.
So our job, unfortunately, 9 times out of 10 is giving somebody an answer that they don't want to hear.
Yep.
Because I am protecting that owner's interest and their property.
Yep.
Their property is typically one of the number 1 assets in their retirement portfolio.
Yeah, and some people have, what, 10, 20, 30?
I do have investors that have several properties.
Yeah.
And so the whole point of having a property manager is to minimize your risk.
Sure. And also, I guess, make life easier, right?
Be anonymous is the number 1 thing that is
Yeah.
nice with property management. The tenants, you know, do not need to interface with an owner, and so we become that face for the owner.
Gotcha. Okay.
We are the bad guy.
Okay, so going that with all this, I mean, we're going to take this in a lot of directions because we got some questions written down to kind of go through this because because I asked you before we even started this to write down some of the most common things that people want to know about it, and you got a great list here. But what made you want to become an owner of a property management company? Like, what was the decision behind that?
2 things. First, financial.
Sure.
I wanted to be in control of my financial future. And so, for better or for worse, I was going to be that person. And so, I have owned other businesses in the past.
Really?
And,
what kind of businesses?
I've owned a donut shop in Monument.
Really?
Which is totally different for a brief time in a hiatus of my career. And then with my ex-husband, we owned a design and drafting company. So, you know, I've had that entrepreneurial experience and desire, and I'm a doer, so I like to be in control, which makes me a great property manager.
Yeah.
And so that financial was part of it, but the other part was I've been fortunate to work for a lot of great companies here in Colorado Springs.
Okay.
And so in doing that through those years, you pick out the good and the bad, and you'd say, if I were going to own a company, I would like to do it this way.
Gotcha.
And so that became a fruition, and I got to determine how I wanted to have a relationship with my clients.
Awesome. Yeah, okay, so did you always know ever since you were young, or did you know you wanted to own businesses? Like, were you always entrepreneurial?
No, actually, it was the person that introduced me to real estate that showed me that world, because at that time I was, 21 years old. You had to be 21 to get your real estate license. You really don't understand how the world works, in my opinion, at that time. And so I was able to see how you take something from beginning to end and 1, make a profit, and 2, make a difference in what you're doing in your life. And so that inspired me to open up my own businesses.
Gotcha, okay. All right, so why property management? Other than, I mean, you could be a business owner, a lot of stuff for financial, right?
Sure.
And then you had your real estate license, but like, was there anything else kind of intrinsic, and I might be digging where there's nothing there, but was there something that, as a passion, that put you toward property management versus just doing like a real estate company or something?
Aside from, like in any business, there is some negative sides to being an owner of a business, but the passion to be able to have an owner call you and say, I cannot do this by myself. I am struggling really hard. Can you help me through this situation? What can you do for me? I love that type of client. It's difficult on the front end because you're usually dealing with the situation where they have to evict their tenant and they don't know how, and their tenant, they're in another state, and the relationship with their tenant is just falling apart. And so there's a lot of gratification of being able to say, I can help you, I can do this. And so every day is a different day in property management. You never experience the same day twice. And I think that's where the passion is. I just love to see what the next day is going to bring. Sure, does it bring trial? Every day, sometimes every hour of the day.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I have 300 owners that say, "Okay, I can sleep tonight because somebody else is on watch."
Yep.
And so I like to be the watch.
Okay. No, that's great. So just so people listening know, how long have you owned a Cut Above?
I've owned a Cut Above for 6 years.
Okay. And so through that 6-year journey, actually, you've had with over 300 houses or clients. Would you say there's a fair amount of homeowners that are like clients that are here in town, or are they mostly out of state? This is for my own curiosity.
I think it depends on different property managers, what their perfect client is, I would say.
Sure, okay.
So there are
That's fair.
some property managers that do just high-end properties. There are some property managers that do high-end or maybe commercial. My journey ended up being a combination of investors. So I have a lot of owners that live here in Colorado Springs that do their own work, that we work very closely with on their properties. And then the other half are in another state, whether they're with the military and they bought here and they had to leave the home, or they just are in another industry that they've had to leave. So I have a good mix of both. So I can handle the investor need of a fourplex or an 18-unit apartment community, or I can handle just a single-family home.
Gotcha. Okay, that's cool.
And it really depends. Property managers, owners of property management companies define what they want to be. And a lot of companies don't want to handle the investor type of properties because those take a little more work.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so next part, just so that if anyone who is thinking about investing in properties or has one and then they want to lease it out, what makes a good property manager? I know it's not a biased question at all, but
No, well, I guess I'm going to give a plug for the National Association of Residential Property Managers, because NARPM is a local and a national organization here in Colorado Springs.
Okay.
That is where property managers get a lot of their education.
Okay.
The Real Estate Commission can have you pass a test to sell real estate and do property management, but they don't really educate property managers. They are getting so much better about that. But NARPM used to be the only place where we could go and get educational classes that were tied strictly to property management.
Okay.
If you went to education that was offered by the state, you were learning how to do a contract for sale.
Gotcha.
We don't typically have to do that unless you're doing both a combination of property management and sales. And so NARPM became an industry leader in educating property managers. So I think if you are going to look for a property manager, you should interview at least 2 or 3.
Is there like a certification that NARPM gives?
There is, and so you become either a residential property manager or you have 2 other higher designations. And so you have to go through the classes, and you have to do fair housing, and you have to be up on everything. Plus your continuing education for the Real Estate Commission. So my recommendation is to look on that national website and look for property managers that have that designation behind them, because you're going to get a higher educated resident or property manager. The other thing is, of course, you can always use the Better Business Bureau. That's one way to take a look. And my experience has been that most people want to have someone with an A rating. Well, who wouldn't?
Yeah, that makes sense.
However, when an owner looks at a website, for example, my website, you will look on my website and I have reviews, and most of them are reviews from tenants who don't like how I settle the security deposit. And that is unfortunate, because as a property manager, I like my tenants. I work for my owners. And so at the end of the day, I've got to settle it in the appropriate way that I think that I have covered my owner for the expenses they are due and be fair to the tenant.
Yeah.
We don't always agree. And
Sure.
so as people are looking for reviews on Yelp or Google or Better Business Bureau for a property manager, read through those and see what those are really saying.
Yeah.
You know, if it's a tenant that says, I'm mad because my bank NSF my payment and it's all somebody's fault, that's not a valid review that represents how a property manager does business.
Sure.
If the property manager, however, responds to all of those on any site, Yelp or Google or the Better Business Bureau or whatever, then you can see that they are truly interested in maintaining the relationship, trying to come to a common ground with those people and still represent their owners. And so I think that's what makes it one of the things that people can look for. Obviously, how many years somebody's been in the business is a good indication.
Yep.
And you know, every person has a different personality. If you're sitting down with 3 people, there's going to be one that you really feel like you connect with or has really educated you in the situation. So
Gotcha. Okay.
that's what I recommend to my clients.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, actually, I want to take a step back. Let's do like a little intermission between the business stuff because I want people to get to know you. How long have you been in the Springs?
I moved from Pueblo. I grew up in Pueblo, so
Okay.
I'm a native, and I moved in to Colorado Springs in 1981.
Oh wow. Okay.
And I've been here ever since.
Okay. And if you don't mind me asking, when you moved to Colorado, how old were you? Colorado Springs. When you moved here, how old were you?
I was 18.
Oh wow. Okay. So you've seen this town change a lot.
A lot.
Yeah. Okay.
When I first came here, there was a bumper stickers that said, "Pray for me, I drive Academy." And I didn't know what that meant. Now I would say that would be appropriate to Powers, but at the time there wasn't Powers. And so,
it was dirt road.
Yeah. So,
well, we came out here in it was like 93 or 4, I think. And back then, yeah, I mean, it only went out to like on the north side is where I live, and it's like Woodman and Austin Bluffs is like the end of town.
Right.
Yeah.
So East has totally exploded.
Oh
so.
yeah. Well, that's cool. And then, is your family here in town?
All my family is here in town.
How many kids do you have?
I have 2 boys.
Okay.
So
How was it raising 2 boys?
actually, I'm very grateful I had boys and not girls.
Yeah.
They're very little drama, and I've been very blessed. They
That's
are
good.
awesome.
My wife and I are talking about that whole family planning thing, so it's like, I don't know if I can handle a girl.
Well, I'm looking for a girl as a granddaughter, so anybody wants to fill that, I'm good. Subtle hint there.
You're like, hey boys, you should probably get on that.
I already told my youngest, so.
Yeah, my mom's like, you gonna have kids eventually? I'm like, she's like, you're almost 30, and I'm like, I got it. Yeah.
I have a 10-year-old grandson, and I can tell you, there's no greater pleasure than spending time with him. So
That's awesome.
I'd rather spend time with him than his dad. I can spoil him and give him back. So
yeah. Right? That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Okay, so family's here in town. Well, I had another question, but then I lost it in that whole heap of things.
I can tell you that my husband is retired Army. He retired after 22 years, and he works civil service at Fort Carson. So,
cool.
And my youngest is full-time reserves, and so
Nice.
Colorado Springs is a very big military town. I think we'd be big whether the 5 military bases were here or not.
Sure.
But that plays an integral part in our family. So.
Yeah, awesome. So it's really important to you guys.
Well, and I think it's important for people who are looking for someone to represent their property because we understand what it's like to get sent to different places and have to leave your home and your family, and deployment is never fun. And, I think the military, especially the Army, is trying to make some changes as far as long-term deployments. But I know people that have been deployed constantly and see how that affects their family.
6, 7, 8 deployments.
There's my owners who are military certainly understand if a military family rents their home, the struggles that they're going to face, and know that they may or may not be able to maintain the term of the lease because they might get PCS to another station. So.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Okay, so you've been in town a long time. What are some of your favorite activities to do with you and your husband?
We ride a lot of bicycle trails here in Colorado Springs, and so
That's cool.
we just recently rode Garden of the Gods last weekend, and so
Nice.
that's beautiful. And there's
that
so
time
many
of year?
trails in Colorado Springs, so I would say that's probably our number one thing that we like to do. And
Okay.
we own a home here in town, and we enjoy just staying at home and working on our yard. And
If you guys could travel anywhere, where would you go?
I like to travel. So.
Okay.
Now, my husband not so much, but I like to travel.
He's
and
like, I'm done traveling.
he is. He thinks that, the military, he did 22 years of traveling. He says, different.
Yeah,
You don't have a rucksack.
You're not working.
And you get to have, cocktails at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But the next trip that I would like to do is I'd like to go to Ireland. So
Ooh, that sounds awesome.
Ireland and Scotland is the next two that I want to
There you
see.
go. I heard now, right now is the best time to go to, or one of the best.
I don't know. I know it's not achievable at this moment, so I haven't tempted myself. But
Yeah.
that'd be my goal here in the next 5 years.
I have a sister. Well, I have 6 sisters. But
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah, one of them lives in England.
Now I understand why you don't want a girl. No.
Yeah. Right.
Or maybe you want a girl, but you understand what it's going to...
I understand the drama of
right.
that. No, it's like, I'll have to get really proficient with cleaning guns. That's my thought. I can't stand the thought of, I remember what it was like being a boy
Mm-hmm.
at that age, and it's like that dating age, and you're like, I just hate you young kids.
Yeah, pretty much. But you're prepared. You know what to look for.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so the tangent there, but she lives in England,
Oh, nice.
and I was like, hey, if I come over and visit, do you mind if we leave for a little while to go explore? And anyway, she said no, but I'm guessing she'd probably be not totally okay with it.
I think a 2-month trip to Europe and a train pass, unlimited train pass, would be most awesome.
Yeah, mini retirements, right? It's like 3, 4, 5, whatever. Anyway, all right, so now let's shift gears back into a cut above.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to go through the list of questions here, but these are the top questions that are asked about property management. And if y'all are listening, you can either agree or not. We're going to go through it, but hopefully you agree with this list and find this all pretty fascinating. Okay, so when you own a rental property, how are the repairs handled? Like if a tenant puts in a request or the owner goes, I know that needs to get done, how are the repairs handled?
So the management agreement really identifies how a property manager is going to handle repairs for an owner. So I'll speak to the owner side of things first.
Okay.
So something that stands out for Cut Above is that we contact our owners with every request from a tenant, whether it's just a short email, a text, or a phone call saying, your tenant has called in a repair, we're going to send out X, and we'll let you know what we find. The big thing that owners want to do is control cost, of course. They want to know what's going to hit their bank account next month, because if they never get notified and they're expecting 1,000 and they get 200, it's quite a shock for owners, and it's never a fun conversation for property managers. So our goal is to keep our owners educated about what's going on. They don't want to be intricately involved. They just want to know on the top side that something's coming up.
Good communication, yeah.
Good communication. And so we discuss with them. We let them know that if they have any requirements that they need us to maintain, for example, let's take an appliance. If the appliance is 15 years old, the owner may say, you know what, I don't want to put a lot of money into that. I just want to buy a new one if it can't be fixed easily.
Okay.
And so we give that opportunity to happen. Then we facilitate the repair. We get invoice from the vendor, we pay the invoice, and we move forward.
Okay.
If a tenant calls in a repair, and we require our tenants to call in to us, we don't allow them to do their own repairs, because what we found is most people are not really good maintenance people.
They like to think so. I mean,
They do think so.
You can YouTube anything now.
Well, and there are some things that are appropriate for that. Don't get me wrong, but
Like a light bulb.
a battery. I can tell you that every time I do a property renewal inspection, the smoke detector's sitting on a counter and they have no battery in it, which I don't understand, because it's a $1, right? A
Yeah.
battery, to save your entire family's life.
Yeah.
But we keep educating, and that's what we do best, is we educate people. But if they call in a work order, then we determine what type of vendor goes out. Is it a plumber? Is it an electrician? Is it, what type of industry are we going to contact in order to solve that problem? And
Sure.
sometimes it's really that we play detective. We start with the most obvious and then try to determine what's going on from there. And so they contact us, we facilitate the vendor connects them, we get it repaired, we move on with our day. So it's all about communication, whether it's to the tenant or to the owner, what's really going on with their property, because neither party likes a surprise.
No, I imagine that, yeah.
The hard part is, however, and I'll give you the example that we use all the time in our leases, is that if you call in and say that your bathroom lights won't come on, we're going to tell you to go check your GFI.
What is that?
The GFI is the red button on your outlet that says, reset it in case the power goes out, or let's say you blew it with the hair dryer in the morning. Of course, I don't think you use a hair dryer, but anyway. So, we try to do the education first, and we tell them, go check all the GFIs in the house. They may be in the bathroom, they may be in the kitchen, they may be in the garage. Because if we send out an electrician and all they do is push a button, we're going to bill that back to you. So we're always trying to educate them to save them money and solve the problem. Same thing with the garbage disposal. Those two are the two calls we get a lot that we can really try to save them money, the tenants and the owners, of course. But most tenants don't know there's a reset button on the bottom of their garbage disposal.
I didn't know that.
So,
well, actually, I knew the reset on the bottom, but I didn't know the outlet.
The GFI? So, hey, if you have that happen, call me. I'll help you do it.
Today I learned. Just call Misty.
So we have a list of things that we actually can have that conversation with the tenant on to try to save them a service call. Because literally, if the plumber goes over there and resets it with a button and it's working, the tenant's going to get that bill. And they're not happy with us. But at the end of the day, we've tried to communicate that to them before they ever get the bill.
Sure, yeah. And that's an expensive, like $75 button click.
Exactly.
Or $200.
And so that's the fine line that a property manager works between an owner and a tenant. And so, like I said, at the end of the day, sometimes we have to be the bad guy and say, all they did was click the button in the garage.
Yeah.
You have power. That's the great news.
Yeah.
And we're going to send you the invoice.
Gotcha. Okay. Speaking of money, how is price calculated
for rent?
For rent.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you purchase the property, a real estate agent probably did what's called a certified market analysis, or a CMA.
Okay.
And that tells you what things are going for in the neighborhood that you're looking at buying, how many days did it take to rent, what are your price ranges, so you can make an educated guess. In property management, we do the same thing. It's only for rentals.
Is the CMA, is that I feel like that could be a loosely manipulated thing.
It's really not,
No?
because whether you're getting your information on Zillow, which I don't recommend because it's never accurate, you take it for what it's worth. But if you're a real estate agent and you have access to the MLS system, which is the multiple listing service here in Colorado Springs, you have actual facts that you're basing it on. You're comparing apples to apples. You're doing a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, 2-car garage home against a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, 2-car garage home in that subdivision. And so you can literally tell the owner it comes in between X and X. If your home has granite countertops and all of these additional area improvements, then you're obviously going to be on the top end.
Sure.
If your home, however, just has the standard, then you're going to be somewhere between low and medium market.
Now, how much do those little upgrades influence the price of rent?
It depends on the price range that you're looking at. So certain price ranges already come with stainless steel appliances and granite countertops and everything like that. The number one thing I think in Colorado Springs that improves the price of a home is adding central air if it doesn't have it.
Oh yeah, if you don't have AC.
More and more people want central air. And that wasn't the case when I started in the 80s and the 90s. But as we progress in our temperature changes, that's a big desire. And so you have people that come here from all different states. South Carolina, for example, they assume every home has central air here because every home does there, but it doesn't.
Yeah, well, even homes built in the early 2000s didn't have AC.
Right.
And it's like, why? Like, I'm looking at it now going, why isn't that standard? But
because it's very, very expensive. And, if you could purchase a home today, you would probably take that option right off the bat.
Oh, yeah.
But back then, it wasn't, you maybe had 10 days out of the year that you needed it. So why would you do the extra expense?
That's true. Actually, we hooked a swamp cooler up to our house.
So when owners call me, and I have a lot of owners that make a big improvement on their property once a year. And the one thing they always ask is what would actually improve the rent amount that I can charge for my home. And so that one of the things that I tell them is central air.
Gotcha.
Maintaining their home in a good condition, keeping it painted and maintained will always keep them at the top.
Cool. All right, so then let's talk about tenants. It's a fun subject. So how do you screen, and what are the laws around tenants? Like, you can't really, because of the Fair Housing Act, and she can explain that if you don't know what that is. She'll do a better job than me. So if you're listening, I'll let Misty take that one. But what are some of the things that you can do to screen tenants, and then how can you put your odds that you get a better tenant in versus not? I mean, what are the rules around that?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that there are rules. There are certain requirements that each management company puts into place to try to protect their owners from risk. So, for example, there might be some companies that say that you have to have a FICO score of X in order to even qualify for us to present an offer of rental to an owner. I explain to my owners that it's like having a pie in front of you. You have your rental reference that I think is extremely important to how someone's going to take care of your home.
Okay.
So we look for a minimum of 3 years of rental reference that we can take a look at and say, yes, they paid their rent for 3 years without being late, no NSFs, that sort of thing. Then you have the FICO score. And of course, everybody knows what a FICO score. And that's important, but I think it's equally as important as what their rental references come in. Because somebody might have had a situation in their past where they had a foreclosure. But they've rebuilt their credit since then or something. So I don't like to take one piece of the pie out and say this is how you should judge this person.
Sure.
And then the third part of it is the criminal. The criminal, of course, every property management company is going to have their own policies on how they like to look at that. And so I'm not going to try to explain other companies' policies. However, what you're trying to protect yourself from is damage to the property. So, any kind of violent offenses, you're probably going to look strongly at as far as not accepting as a property, felonies, that type of thing. And then the fourth is employment. Okay. So you want to make sure that they've been employed for more than 6 months or 2 months. And that being said, I'm talking about if they have a letter of intent from an employer and they're making a transition from state to state, that explains to you why there's a change in their employment. Sure. But if you have a person that's been employed 3 months here, 3 months there, it doesn't show a strong earning history where you can say, I'm very comfortable knowing that they're going to be able to make the rent next month. Sure. And so you have to put that all together, in my opinion, to make a good decision with your owner. Gotcha. Okay. And then are you able to choose what applicant you want to put in the house? The owner is able to choose that applicant, absolutely. So right now, just like in sales, we may have more than one offer of intent to rent from clients. And so we run them all alike together, and we present them all together to the owner using applicant A, B, and C. And the owner makes the decision based on credit worthiness, rental worthiness, and things like that. They don't know who that person is. All they know is it's applicant A, B, or C. Sure, okay. That makes sense. And I tell my clients, really the only thing that's important when you make this decision is their money green, and have they been good with it? Yeah, that's true. I mean, if you've been responsible with your finances, you're a great candidate. And I think that most people don't realize how important it is to have good credit until they start looking to buy either a home, try to rent a property, or buy a car. It can be pretty earth-shattering if you can't find a home for your family.
Yeah, I can imagine that. What about people who, what about 21? Because I feel like there's a thing going on nowadays, and maybe it's perception and you'd know better, but what about people who had lived at home, they're in their 20s, but they lived at home with mom and dad until they finally were going to rent something, and the first thing they want to do is rent a house or whatever. I mean, they don't have 3 years of rental history. What happens then?
Well, we're able to verify. One of the things that's great about software in this day and age for property management is you're able to, in the background checks, you're able to identify addresses for however long. Like if I ran your credit today, I could tell you everywhere you lived
Sure.
for the last 10 years. And so it's very evident that information is correct, that the applicant's telling the truth. More and more people are staying at home longer because it is so expensive to live out on your own. And so you either are faced to have roommate situation, or you wait till you can afford it on your own. And so that's part of the picture that gets presented to the owner.
Gotcha. Okay. What about people who are entrepreneurial and started a business, but they don't have 6 months of history or whatever? How do they rent?
So entrepreneurs, as I am, I know what it's like to be out there trying to buy something, because the standard answer is, I need to see your tax returns.
Yep.
Okay. That is the only way that financial institutions or property managers, mortgage brokers have to verify that, yes, you say you make X and it's verified on your taxes. And so if you've opened your business in February of 2017 and you're trying to buy a home now, we're either going to be we can't look at your tax returns because you don't have one. So then we're going to be looking at bank statements to show that you are depositing what you say you're depositing. And so there are ways to work around that, but those type of individuals, they know they're facing the uphill battle, and they know that people look at them, I don't want to say differently, we just have to do different things to be able to quantify that, yes, they can afford this rental.
Yeah, I get that all the time right now, because we're in that mode where it's like, well, we started a business, so don't plan on buying anything major for 2 years.
That's exactly right. And one of the requirements that a cut above has is that a client must make in gross income 3 times the amount of rent in order to qualify to even see the home. One, we're not going to waste their time or our owner's time showing a property to someone that can't qualify. 3 times the amount really allows them to be able to afford to live in the home, still pay a car payment, their insurance, have food, and actually be comfortable in the home.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the first questions that we ask someone when they call in about a property.
I've over the years, because I don't think I've explained on the podcast to people listening that I did property management for a while when I was younger. And I actually really like that 3 times rule a lot. Some people do 2.5, some people do 3. I really like, from a budget standpoint, a financial standpoint, your home shouldn't cost more than 30% of your income.
Right.
Because otherwise you are pretty strapped at that point. Well,
and there are a lot of our residents who live month to month. It's very difficult. They don't have a lot of savings, and so in order for me to say to my owner, I feel comfortable having this person live in your home and fulfill their lease term, that's a good guideline for us to use.
Yeah, and I think people might disagree with me, but I think that's a good decision.
Well, and we do qualify that when they fill out their application. I mean, we verify their employment. We want to know for sure that number comes in where we're at.
Yep.
So when I'm talking to owners, that's one of the things that we tell them is that, we're going to require this before we even bring them an application. The other thing that they can't have is they can't have an eviction on their account. That's pretty obvious there.
Yeah. Ooh. Okay, that's one of the questions too.
Okay.
Talk to me about evictions. How does it happen? What's the process like for both the owner and the tenant?
Okay. It's a lengthy little conversation. However, in Colorado, When a tenant doesn't pay their rent, the first thing you have to do is deliver to the resident, either by hand or by posting on an obvious like front door, a 3-day demand. And that really tells the tenant you have 3 days to pay or give us possession of the home.
Mm-hmm.
For the owner, what that means is depending on whatever day the rent is due, for example, our leases say the rent's due by 5 p.m. on the 5th. The first thing we do on the 6th is serve all those notices every month. Then we have to wait 3 days because we've given them 3 days to pay.
Yep.
After that 3-day period, then we have a conversation with the owner, because the next step is if the tenant hasn't made any kind of arrangements, is not communicating with us in any way, the only step we have for the owner is to pursue getting possession of the property back. And that means contacting an attorney. We use a local attorney here in Colorado Springs.
Who do you guys use?
We use Kenneth Davidson Law Firm in security.
There's a plug.
And he is awesome. I've used him for many, many, many years. What happens at that point then? That immediately causes the tenant to have a $253 or more charge put to their account, plus the rent that they owe. So we really don't want to do that. That's not our goal, is to have that situation. So we want tenants to talk to us. We want tenants to come in and say, hey, I can't make my payment until X, and be able to have that conversation with the owner and see if that will work. But when there's no communication whatsoever and they're burying their head in the sand, the only option the owner has then is to do that 3-day demand.
Yeah.
We have to wait a week to get on the court docket. Once we get in front of the judge, you will always get possession. If they owe you rent, the judge will always give the owner possession of their home. The bad news is then at that point, currently now, the judge also gives them an additional 48 hours to get out of the home. So we can't do anything until those 48 hours pass.
So like as an owner, you're sitting there until like the 16th, 17th, 18th of the month.
You're already at that point.
Yeah.
Then what you have to do is call for a writ of restitution, which is where the judge gives the sheriff the walking orders to actually move that person out of the home. The City of Colorado Springs Police Department cannot do that.
Yeah.
It is the sheriff's department.
And that appointment with the sheriff can take some time too.
You are working with the civil division and at their schedule. And so it may be quick, depending on what part of town you're in, or it's summer and there's a lot of them. You just don't know. Typically, I would say to most of my owners, it's a 30-day process.
Yeah, to evict somebody.
Yeah. And so that's why working an exit strategy with a tenant is so much better. You get the property back faster. The tenants typically will take a sign with them, put it in the yard, start working on allowing you to do showings, so that you're getting somebody in place far faster than doing an eviction, and much less expense than doing an eviction, because once you do the eviction, you have to hire a crew that will take everything out of a home within 1 hour. You're only given 1 hour, no matter how big the home is, to remove all their belongings to the street.
Yeah, and you put them out on the street corner.
You have to put them on the public street, yes, and then you secure the home and start the process all over. And so by the time you have to, because owners always pay bills first and then recoup the expense from a tenant, you had to pay the attorney. You have to pay the crew to move the tenant out.
Yeah.
Then you get to start the process of cleaning, carpet cleaning, any repairs before you can even start with the next tenant. So it's extremely expensive, and we try at all costs never to go there.
Yeah. Okay, so from my own knowledge, but if it's too much, just let me know. But how many evictions would you say you do a month? I mean, do you evict every month?
A month? No. In fact, I would say, and I can't speak for other companies, but I would say maybe 3 or 4 a year.
Okay.
Because truly, we don't want to do that. That is not our goal.
Yeah.
It doesn't help the tenant to have that eviction on their credit. So if they're at all communicating, we're going to work out an exit strategy that works for everybody.
Gotcha. We've been doing this for a while. So let me just end with this. How are you on time?
I need to go.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So there's a lot more. I'm guessing we're going to have you back on just to kind of go through this, because it's so much stuff.
It is.
But I just want to say I really appreciate you coming in and just taking the time to explain a little bit about you and what you do. I mean, I didn't even get to ask you about business owner stuff, like entrepreneur stuff. Didn't even get to that. That's all right. We'll get you back in here and do it again.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. Really
Sure.
appreciate it. And then for anyone who's listening, take some time. If you're either a prospective investor or somebody who owns rental properties, take some time, look at a Cut Above's website. Misty is a hoot. We always have a lot of fun with her. But anyway, take a look. Thank you again so much for tuning in and listening to this. If you have questions, put them up in the comments. And also go check out her site, Cut Above Property Management. You can just Google it. They can find you on Facebook, Instagram, and they can direct message you from there or leave a comment on one of the pictures or something. And then just reach out. Let us know. And I'm sure she'll be more than happy to answer any questions, right?
Sure.
All right. Well, any final thoughts?
No, I look forward to the next time.
All right. Thanks, Misty. And thank you guys for tuning in. Hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.